Don't open your eyes. On the last day of every month, close the blinds or curtains before you sleep. If in the middle of the night you hear a tapping noise at your window, don't open your eyes. If you're one of the unlucky ones, you'll hear the pebble sound at your window. It's not a friend, just keep your eyes shut. The sound will get louder, the tapping will get faster and faster. Don't let your curiosity get the better of you. Don't move. It'll lose its patience, it'll start thumping the window. Your window will shake and shudder and the noises will only get louder. It will furiously pound the window and shake the panes. Don't worry, the window won't break, but for goodness sake, don't open your eyes. No matter how scared you are, no matter how badly you want to scream, pretend you don't hear, pretend you're still asleep. After a while, the noises will stop. Don't fall for it, keep your eyes shut. Try to sleep if you can. Don't get up, don't open your eyes until the sun comes up. Those who do open their eyes, well, no one really knows what happens.
So for the first time in a really long time, I actually had something scary happen to me last night. So I was up really late because my boyfriend's in Vegas and their time difference is 2 hours behind. And he goes to bed really late. So for the past few days, I've been staying up till 4 a.m. until he falls asleep. So last night I decided I wanted to get some food, a late night snack. And at this point, I think it's like 2 a.m. And in my basement, I hear some rumbling and fumbling, but nobody's down there. Everybody's asleep. I don't have any pets. My dog's dead. I don't have any pets. So I'm in the kitchen listening, and my kitchen is right here, and like the stairs to the basement is right there, and like my house is low-key empty, so you could hear everything. And I start hearing little whispers, a little. So I'm sitting there eating my snack, and I hear that shit, and I pause the YouTube video I was watching, and I start hearing footsteps come upstairs. So I sat in my backyard for the rest of the night, up until like 3 a.m., and then I went inside and went to bed.
It's time for Cookies and Crime listener stories. This is The Woman in White, sent in by Min. Min says, back in 2018, our whole family went on a trip back to Arkansas where we stayed at an Airbnb for 5 weeks, and it was completely in the middle of nowhere. But we were excited for this trip since we were going to reunite with our other family and friends that we haven't seen in a while. Once we all got together, we spent the whole day together until it got dark. They decided one side of the house would be for teenagers, around 14 to 16 years old, and the other side would be for the adults and the little ones. We had our own kitchen, so we were in the lounge just messing around and playing games until it was time to go to bed. Everyone fell asleep, and then me and my cousin woke up around 2 a.m. to hearing footsteps and banging. We just thought it was someone else or someone trying to scare us. We decided that we both were gonna go to the bathroom together and take turns just standing outside for each other because we were scared. Once we were done, we started to head back to our rooms, which was right at the end. But then we saw a woman in a white dress at the bottom of the stairs, where there was a railing giving a full view of the living room. My cousin decided to call the person and ask what they were doing, but the woman just carried on walking until she disappeared into the kitchen. But we shrugged it off, thinking it was one of the adults probably checking on us, and everyone was so tired we just went back to bed. In the morning, we all got together outside to eat breakfast and to plan our day. We started joking around again, but then my cousin asked if anyone was checking on us last night and who was awake. All the adults froze and looked at us, and then said, no one woke up to check on us, and our aunts didn't have any white dresses, which freaked us all out. I was literally about to cry, so my dad decided to call the owner and see for himself. The guy who owns the Airbnb came over and decided to tell us what exactly it was. He said it was his wife who unalived herself in the same exact spot where me and my cousin saw her. He told us that other people, mostly kids, have seen her, but she's harmless, so there's nothing to be afraid of. So after that, we spent our whole 5 weeks in the house to not see her again, but I'm still curious about it.
This is why I'm traumatized from sleeping in the dark. One night I was watching a movie, then I started to hear something at my window, but I assumed it was bushes or something. But then my dog started jumping and acting crazy, so I paused the movie and I slowly walked towards my window. When I peeked through the window, I believe I saw a pair of eyes, so I jumped back really fast, but then I looked again and it was gone. I was watching a scary movie, so I didn't want to overthink that I actually just saw a pair of eyes. I was home alone, so I tried to stay calm. Even though my dog was going crazy, I brushed it off and continued to watch my movie. I started to doze off until I heard the same noise, but not on the outside. This time it was coming from my room. I was so scared to get up and turn on my light, so I turned on my flashlight, and as soon as I turned on my flashlight, I saw the same pair of eyes staring and smiling at me at the edge of my bed.
I have a movie idea. I know it's been a little bit, but I'm back. So hear me out. A young woman has spent basically her entire life in the mental hospital. But while she's in the hospital, she gets pregnant and has a baby boy. Soon after his birth, she begins to act normal and stable, so she gets released to raise him. But by the boy's 18th birthday, his mother is very ill. So he went to go visit her, maybe for the last time. But before he left, her last words to him were, "I'm not as crazy as everyone says I am. Trace my steps and come and find me." What? The next day, she died. He wasn't there for the death, and she wanted a closed casket funeral. But her words kept playing in his mind. Come and find me. So he kind of sort of did something really illegal. He dug up her grave. Inside, he found nothing but her mental hospital bracelet from years ago. So he does what she says. He checks himself into the mental hospital and begins to trace her steps. Is his mother alive? Is this some sort of sick game she's playing? Are there more clues within the hospital walls? Or did the pain of her death cause him to lose it?
It's time for Cookies and Crime. This is the case of Amanda Knox. For the full story, there's a new Cookies and Crime on my YouTube. Amanda Knox was born July 9th, 1987 in Seattle, Washington. Amanda described herself as quirky and had a kookiness to her. Friends described her as goofy, naive, and trusting, and sometimes can be loud and offensive, but in a non-confrontational way. In April 2007, she told her parents that she would be studying abroad in Italy for a year. She fell in love with a shared apartment in a 2-level stone, 300-year-old villa on top of a hill and close to the university in Perugia, Italy. Conveniently, it was located close to a seedy urban piazza frequented by drug dealers. She soon found out that her new roommate would be Meredith Kircher, a British exchange student. Although different in personalities, they both got along well and never argued. According to Amanda, they had an easiness together. While in Italy, she would write about her experience on her MySpace page, nicknamed Foxy Noxy. Being sexually open, she posted a naked picture of an Italian man who she met on a train and ended up in bed with. Amanda then met Rafael Solicito at a performance of classical music. He was 23, a virgin, and the only son of a wealthy doctor. They spent the evening together and then, in Amanda's words, became a thing. In the late afternoon of November 1st, 2007, Amanda went to Rafael's place. At 8:30 p.m., Amanda realized that it was one of her regular work nights at Le Chic, a pub. Checking her phone, she was relieved to find a text from Patrick Lumumba, her boss, telling her that she didn't have to come in. Amanda texted back in Italian, "See you later, have a good evening." The next morning, Amanda walked back to her place to find nobody home. She noticed a smear of blood on the bathroom faucet. She took a shower before noticing what looked like more blood on a bath mat. Then she noticed feces in the toilet. Knowing that none of her roommates would do this, she grabbed her purse and ran out of the house. She called all of her roommates and realized they were not around, but Meredith didn't pick up her phone. She walked back to Rafael's place and he suggested that they go back to look around. Her other roommate's room, Filomena, was a mess and her window was shattered. Meredith's door was locked. Without being able to peek inside, they called the police. Once they got Meredith's door open, they found her body underneath her comforter. Her t-shirt was saturated in blood and her neck showed multiple and deep stab wounds. Police then interviewed Amanda for 6 hours. Without knowing it, the police had already considered both her and her boyfriend to be suspects. They believed the break-in was staged and thought a killer who would cover a naked body with a blanket was likely female. The fact that she took a shower in a bloody bathroom was odd. Another time during the investigation, she slipped on some booties and gloves, thrusted her arms out like the lead in a musical, and sang out, "Ta-da!" All of these things seem suspicious when you already find someone guilty. After 4 days of questioning, they were able to get a false confession out of her. After pressuring her, she told them that the murderer was her boss, Patrick Lumumba. The Italian investigators saw her text to him saying, "See you later," as in they were meeting up that night. Whereas in America, "see you later" could mean at any point in time. Amanda, Rafael, and Patrick Lumumba were found guilty of the murder of Meredith. She would end up spending 1,427 nights in prison. The investigation continued, and the lack of evidence connecting Lumumba to the crime freed him. They found the real criminal, Rudy Keed, who knows Meredith and Amanda, and his DNA was all over the scene. Instead of acquitting all of them, even though there was a major lack of evidence connecting Amanda and Rafael to the scene, Rudy only placed Lumumba in the story. Even though previously Rudy said that Amanda had nothing to do with it, but then changed his story to fit the investigation. Media spun the story to say that it was a sex game gone wrong, which they spun from her Foxy Noxy MySpace page. Finally, in 2015, after realizing there were some major errors in the investigation, Amanda and Rafael were freed from the murder charges. After that, she became a journalist, and appears at events sponsored by the Innocent Project, which creates awareness of the problem of wrongful convictions. She now hosts a podcast called The Truth About True Crime. It's time for Cookies and Crime. This is the death of Mary Reeser. At roughly 8 a.m. on July 2nd, 1951, Reeser's landlady, Pansy Carpenter, arrived at Reeser's apartment in St. Petersburg, Florida with a telegram. She tried opening the door, but the doorknob was uncomfortably hot to the touch, so she called the police. Inside was Reeser's body, which basically turned to a pile of ashes. The ashes were found among the remains of a chair in which she had been sitting. Only part of her left foot, which was wearing a slipper, and her backbone remained, along with her skull. Plastic household objects at a distance from the seat of the fire were softened and had lost their shapes. And although Reeser's skull was intact, it had shrunken. Her death was thought to be a case of spontaneous human combustion, which is the concept of a human body igniting a fire without any apparent external source of ignition. What was also strange at the scene of the death was only her body and the chair were completely destroyed. Nothing else in the room was even severely scorched or damaged by smoke. But the FBI eventually declared that Reeser had been incinerated by the wick effect. Reeser had taken some sleeping pills, sat in her chair, and lit a cigarette. The sleeping pills took their course and she had fallen unconscious while smoking. The cigarette had fallen on her clothes, setting her on fire. Once her body started to burn, the fat from her body soaked into her clothes, creating a human candle, and it burned long enough to incinerate her whole body. The floor was also cement, so it couldn't spread the fire, thus ending the claim of spontaneous human combustion.
Ever wonder what would happen if you stopped sleeping? During World War II, the Russians wanted to find a way to keep their soldiers awake longer, so they came up with this awful experiment where they took prisoners of war, put them in a gas chamber, and then exposed them to experimental drugs to see how long they could keep them awake for. Initially, the drugs seemed great. The first 4 days, the subjects were agitated, but were normal. By day 5, they stopped interacting with each other and began acting extremely paranoid. On day 9, one of the subjects screamed for so long that he tore his vocal cord. On day 14, they started eating themselves. When they turned off the gas on day 15, all of the subjects began screaming in pain, begging for them to turn the gas back on. When they didn't, they all fell asleep and died. This sounds totally made up until you listen to the police report. In the early 90s, a teenage girl started to see these shadowy figures that would come into her room at night and crawl all around her room and even grab at her legs. At the same time, her health began to rapidly deteriorate, which ultimately led to her death, which doctors never understood. A few days after her death, her sister woke up to a whistling sound and saw a creature crawling around her room with no face. The same night, her mom was ripped out of bed by someone. The father calls the police, who come over, they search the house, they don't find anything, it's all quiet. As they're about to leave, they hear something. Horrifying screams coming out of the bedroom. They run inside, no one's in there, but there are these huge gashes on the wall that were not there before. The police get out of there. In the police report that was filed immediately after this house call, the chief inspector and the 3 officers that were there that night swear they saw and heard the same things as the family, which means the police officially believed that. I love how confident this guy was. In 1731, the King of Sweden was given an incredible gift. His very own lion, who he loved and totally spoiled. Unfortunately, it died young. After a couple of sad years, the king finally decides that he wants to memorialize the lion, so he sends its pelt and the bones to a world-renowned taxidermist. Now, unfortunately, the taxidermist that he sent it to had never actually seen a lion before, and it's 1731, so he can't just Google it. But he doesn't want to let the king down or jeopardize his reputation, so he's like, yeah, send me its bones and pelt. I'll whip you up a lion.
Oh my god, so zombies are literally real and you can become one. There's a syndrome called walking corpse syndrome. It's a neuropsychiatric disorder in which a person believes they are dead or missing a soul and their brain acts like it. A man was diagnosed after a fatal motorcycle crash. He survived, but he didn't think he did. Since the conditions are so rare, it's very difficult to pinpoint the causes and any potential cures. So if anyone becomes a zombie, very slim chance you can return back to normal. What would you do?
These are pretty cool, but it's the plot twist at the end that's gonna get you. You wake up stranded on a deserted island, and now you need to go find drinkable water. So where are some places we can find that? You look around the island and you notice a whole bunch of coconut trees, and you think, well, people drink coconut water, I'll just drink that until I get rescued. Except if you